when we go into that quantum field, it is the new paradigm.
It is.
And by not going there, by not going that quantum space, what's going to happen from the physiological, the psychological, the spiritualogical, as we've coined those three aspects of life?
I think they're going to stay in pain in a relative sense. Look, we grow up, go through the education system, then into the business system, and we get programmed and conditioned, and we have been in what's now become an old paradigm. Because I think people are waking up across the world, but I think there's a marvelous opportunity for corporations to take that leadership position, stepping it up, pushing the envelope into how do we expand ourselves beyond just being that objective, data-driven only, left brain kind of thinking. It's so limiting.
When we connect into that energy force, things move, things happen. We're script writing a new life. We're script writing a new lifestyle. The subconscious mind does not know the difference between fiction and reality. So if we put that imagination into the mind and start to imagine that we're living in a certain way, and we start to develop that and actually bring it into fruition, into practice, after a while it becomes our new paradigm.
Just because you can't put it in a spreadsheet yet doesn't mean it's not happening.
Let's create this vision of what I call the future potential self. Who do I want to become? Hi, Tommy Gallant.
Adrian, Hanks, how are you? It's good to be back on.
Isn't it?
Hey, back live. It's been a while.
It certainly has, and a brand new format for us with our Tuesday evening Australia time webinar. Each and every Tuesday evening now, we will be coming live across the platforms of Facebook and LinkedIn. So we will have viewers on those platforms, which is absolutely fantastic. Really looking forward to tonight's show, Tommy. We've got some great things to share, and I'm really super excited to be here, my friend.
So am I, and I think with a different driver this time compared to how we did this before. But we're coming to everybody on the LinkedIn Corporate Alchemist LinkedIn page, the Corporate Alchemist Facebook page, and pumping out to YouTube now as well with the Corporate Alchemist Project channel that we have set up there. So we're going far and wide, and which is really exciting. So without us talking a little bit too much on the intro here, Adrian, what are we going to be talking about today?
Let's pop a few slides, Tommy, and we'll read off a couple of the teleprompters, and from the slides.
There we go.
Here you are, a couple of cool cats and presenters. Obviously, Adrian Hanks and Tommy Gallant from the Corporate Alchemist Project. So, Tommy, give us a swish.
All righty. So next. Oh, so swish, as in the next slide.
Swish, there we go. So
you're driving those.
I'm just swishing tonight, mate.
It's been a while since we've played with the tech, Adrian.
I know, I love it. And you know what I love, Tommy? I love being raw and real and live. I think YouTube.
Keep it real. Keep it real, man. Yeah.
So Tommy, tonight, there's so much that we can pack in from all that we bring, but tonight really is about learning the 3 steps that busy people, and I know in my world there's a lot of busy people around me, what they need to do today to nourish their soul.
Yeah, nourishing the soul. So I tell you what, with my analytical mind, my ex-corporate, well ingrained and trained over 28 years in the corporate IT industry mind, I'm going to go, all right, fine. Let's start off with what is a soul? So, people have different sort of understandings of what this might be. So let's get a common sort of baseline here.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. Look, I'm always great believe if we define something, we're clear about where our platform is working from. And obviously, as you said, a lot of people have different understandings and different definitions of the soul. You can read many, many, many different. So I'm just going to bring my interpretation. Please, bear with me and do some of your own research if you're not quite sure of your own definition of soul. But for me, the soul is that non-tangible place within our being that harnesses all the emotions. It is the place where our desires are formed and kept. So when we speak of the soul, is if I have a feeling of joy, it emanates from the soul. If I have a moment of anger or rage or frustration, it emanates from the soul, because that's where our feelings and emotions are stored. So
Right.
there are many, many levels to the soul. So just to elaborate a little bit, and we'll do another webinar purely on the soul later on in the series.
Sure.
Is, for me, the soul is divided up into a few different things. We have what we call our intellectual soul. So the soul can actually have some sense of thinking process, if you like. Yeah, it's got a intelligence about it. It has some sort of morality around it. We know as humans when we've done something right or wrong, and that's not from the brain, that's from the soul. And then we have what I call our conscious soul, where when we do something, we know whether we've done it consciously or unconsciously. Once again, that's a soul aspect. So I break the soul up into those three divisions. But in essence, the soul is the seat of our emotions, just in context of where we're going to tonight. And how do we feed and nourish that soul is where we're going tonight, from a very basic place. And that very basic place, Tommy, is all about...
Well, before we go on, just one question, so people are really crystal on this. Then how do you separate that from the spirit? Because people get confused between a soul and a spirit.
All right. So let me just jump back here. So for me, the soul is that place of emotions. For me, the spirit is the aspect of our being that is the decision maker. So if I'm feeling unhappy, my soul will stay in unhappiness until I consciously, in my spirit, decide to change it. So my spirit can be the overruling factor, decider, controller of my emotions, if I can get into that spiritual alignment with myself. So the emotions will just run, like 24/7. They run with however I'm feeling. I can stay in it for months or weeks or years, as we know. We some of us do it. But when I choose consciously with my spirit to change it, I can consciously change it with my spirit. The spirit is the choice maker.
And that's at a higher level, observing that whole software package of the soul that you just mentioned. Yeah.
Totally. Yep.
Whoa. Okay, that's a really important part. Being a physiological guy, and as we're about to move on to the next slide, being the one that's more physiologically backgrounded, Novak Djokovic. In an interview, they asked him and said, "So spiritualism, you've become somewhat more spiritual as you've got a bit older there, Novak. Still crushing it on the tennis court, of course. He changed his drivers, but they asked him the question, so tell me what you understand about spiritualism." And he said, "Well, I'm still learning about kind of what that is, but I know what it's not. It's not my five senses."
Yeah.
Right. So there we go. That should give people enough clarity, hopefully. All right, my friend. So it's all about eating with nourishment.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it?
All right.
Interesting. Nourishing the soul through eating.
Okay. So, I mean, I understand this from a physiological standpoint, and I can talk a bit about that. But if we're talking about nourishment, then we go, just like we've been talking, we're starting down the bottom now to your physical existence as a human, looking after that vessel, because, correct me if I'm wrong, the soul and the spirit kind of connects in. The soul's in there, but the body is that vessel that the entity, if you will, is kind of like antennaing through.
Yep. And that has to be healthy. That has to be healthy with, all the nutrition, the right food, the right liquids, etc., 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 so that the if you like, the soul and the body have somewhere decent to live.
Right, exactly, right. If you're going to have a good experience as a creator, topic for another podcast, webinar. But if you can get this thing working well, you're going to be in good state and not getting a lot of signals coming up through your soul and your spirit, needing a whole lot of help down the track by looking after your human first. So if we're nourishing this 3D physical vessel that we're in, then that makes experience on planet Earth a lot, I think, more enjoyable, I'm going to say. Maybe
and somewhat easier, Tom, I would suggest.
Somewhat easier.
Because if the body can actually get around and move around and do the physical things that it's meant to do, life is easier. Now, when we struggle physically to get even just around, or to walk 100 meters, or to get in and out of bed, or to bend down and pick up something, that's hard work, and it's taxing on the soul, the spirit, the body, and it's quite a tough existence if the physicality is not in play. And we're coming right back to basics of this is all about eating. What we eat, when we eat, how we eat, and probably why we eat. To add into that as well. So maybe I'm going to kick it over to you, Tommy. First thing here, it's all about what what to eat.
Yeah.
Let's start there.
All right. So when we're talking about what, so we are many trillions of cells, right? Trillions of cells, and you want to keep the environment around these cells happy. But if you go into those cells, that's where your DNA strands live, right? And what they're doing is they're kind of like, we've got, I think latest research shows that we've got something like 33,000 now, different bits of genetic makeup code, right? In our DNA, in our genes, right? Which forms the DNA strands that you see in the helix. So they're like software programs themselves, and you're switching them on and switching them off. Or the cell is, depending on the environment that cell is interpreting through not just through the membrane biochemically, but also, this is really interesting, Adrian, and more in your field, through frequency. And in fact, frequency is actually more effective at switching on and off these genes. And so before we go into that part, everybody knows about eating food. And food is also information, and it carries a certain frequency and energy. But there's a lot more work that's got to happen versus just frequency going straight in. And there's been different discussions around 3G, 4G, and 5G. This is kind of why. But when we're talking about what you're eating, this is different for every person. Why? Because mum and dad loaded the gun with the genes that you got. You pull the trigger as to what you're switching on and off based on the environment you're creating for these cells. Let's just call it lifestyle, right? So that comes down to a number of factors, and we won't go through it in this on this webinar. But the three-legged stool of health. Well, eating is one of those legs. Super key, and it's different because we're so biochemically individual with different genes switched on and off. Different reactions going on means we all require different food. So one size doesn't fit all with the food. Now, when you're doing this is also different. Why is that? That's because we have a circadian rhythm, right? And you'd understand a bit about this too, Adrian. There's certain times that biochemically, there's certain hormones that are getting kicked off for certain things. So, for example, for me, cardio in the morning with my actual, in fact, body form and shape, which is as a result of the certain set of genes that I have within my cells, cardio is best for me to do in the morning. For others, it's better later in the day. For some, and then like how much you're actually doing is also very important. That's not the how that we have here, but the quantity that you do can vary. So strength exercise, cardio exercise, HIIT. How much of each of those three legs on the fitness tripod do you need actually varies as well. So that's kind of the what and the when. When with the eating is also really important because of hormones. When are there
And Tommy,
certain hormones?
just on that, you often hear the quip, don't you? You know, the best meal of the day is a breakfast, but not typically for everybody, huh?
Oh, that was beautifully promoted by, you know, Kellogg's and all the cereal companies to bring in this extra meal, right, called breakfast. Back in, oh God, when was it? I don't know. It was decades ago. And that was, once again, for making some extra dollars. Let's whack in an extra meal. They did the same thing with cholesterol. We won't go into that now. But yes, a lot of people actually don't need to break their feast or break fast, until lunchtime. So some people, different body shapes, get off with just 2 meals a day. Some, even 1 meal a day can be sufficient. But this is unique for every individual. For me, yes, lots of smaller meals. I have a smaller digestive system. I learned this through a lot of the stuff that we have in our programs, right? So, okay, I'm going to take a breath there, Adrian.
Yeah. So I just want to come back to this, you know, the when eating. I think for the people watching in here, for them to take a good look at what they're doing with their eating habits. So the question to you viewers is, can you take a bit of a look at what you're doing, of what you're eating and when you're eating, and we'll get to how you're eating afterwards. And really, you know, ask that question: are you eating breakfast just out of habit, or do you really need the breakfast? Is your body type, is your temperament type the type of person that needs it or not? Or as Tommy says, you know, because of the advertising, it says you need your Cocoa Pops in the morning, so we're going to have Cocoa Pops. So I think it's really good. Once again, it's about that consciousness again, spiritual consciousness of really understanding one's diet and nutrition. I know for me, you know, at certain times, if I don't have something to eat in that time, my energy level just dips. So I need to eat at and certain things at certain times to stop that dip. No, I think natural dips are also good and healthy as well, and allowing those dips sometimes, so we allow ourselves to rest in those dip times, because we don't need to be high energy all the time. And
Yeah,
that's that circadian rhythm. You know, if we follow that rhythm and we understand the circadian rhythm and our eating rhythm, and we can match those two together, we're in much of a healthier state from an eating, health, nutrition perspective. So I think it's really good to do that self-evaluation for each and every one of us.
Yeah. And look, let's not get confused between emotional eating and eating your circadian rhythm. And, you know, once again, that's a bit more your space. And if we start talking about the soul and soul nourishment in a minute, there's a difference. Like, oh, I'm hungry. If you know yourself enough and lift it enough, once again, I mean, you can expand on this a little bit later, Adrian, but this is to do with your body, what it needs. I've, you know, coached a number of execs where I think, oh, no, I've got to have that meal. Really? Okay, let's double click on that. And when they work on changing some of those eating habits based on their circadian rhythm, after a while, the old thought that they had, or belief, should I say, that they had, goes away, and their body shape starts to adjust accordingly. And there's reasons why, because when you're eating, you've got a bunch of bugs, let's call it the microbiome, right, in your stomach. And that's in fact where, believe it or not, 70% of your microbiome is in your stomach. So it's a bunch of bacteria that we need. We have a interdependent, or what's the word, symbiotic relationship with these things. And you don't want the bad ones growing in your stomach because you've been having bad, shitty food, right? So when you start not eating that crappy food, they start complaining. Believe it or not, they communicate up your vagus nerve, which is like the biggest highway you've got going up your spine, connecting to the brain. They're jerking on that, and they're saying, dude, where's the sugar? Like, where's the sugar? We're dying here. Cool, good. And this is why fasting is so good. So when is really important to see what it is for you. When should you be eating your meals, right? Yeah. And how much? I'm packing those both into the when. Should we switch to the how?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Because I think it's one of the most important aspects of eating is like how to eat.
Right. And yes. Okay. So the digestive system, believe it or not, starts where, Adrian?
Right there.
Right there, right? Through the lips, on the hips,
Yeah,
not
and on the tip
necessarily
of
all
the
the time.
tongue. The tip of the tongue.
Yeah, right. This is the beginning of the digestive tract, and where does it finish, Adrian?
Well, the other end.
The other end, right? And it's a long trip. It's a long journey.
Yeah.
So, and for some of us, longer than others, actually,
Yeah.
depending on your body type. So, and once again, it gets back to the genes. Chewing your food really well. For me, it used to be just fuel. It was an unemotional experience, something you can expand on. My body's screaming for it, but I'm so busy. Oh my God, I got to get a meal in me. I got to have a coffee. I got to do this. I got to do that. Right. That used to be the old me, the old beliefs, the old behaviors that I used to have during my career, and before I knew a lot about the stuff that I know about today, and especially around epigenetics. That and the emotional aspect of that, right? So what you've got to do is make sure that you are chewing your food properly and enjoying it and savoring it. I feel really happy these days, although I annoy a lot of people when I'm eating dinner, whatever. If I'm having a meal with others, I am the last one, and it's not because it's a plan. I'm the last one that's still got stuff on my plate while they're motoring away, right? Putting fuel into their body, or they're just, oh my God, I want this in me. Get in me, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going, no, I really want to appreciate this. I really want to taste this and enjoy it, right? So, I handle this very differently. It's a lot healthier way to eat.
And Tommy, there's a little trick, and I learned this trick from my beautiful wife. Is when I have a meal that is like a spoon meal, when I can choose to use a spoon. If I go and have an acai bowl or something for breakfast or whatever I do, is use a teaspoon, not a dessert spoon.
Right.
And it slows the eating down. One, you put less in your mouth, so it's more time. Otherwise, if you've got a big spoon or big forks, it goes in more than usually is enough. But if you've just got a little teaspoon and you just feed slowly, one, it takes longer to eat the meal, but also digestively, the body doesn't have to work as hard to digest what's going in. So that little trick of just a teaspoon. I was having breakfast with somebody the other morning, and the waitress brought a couple of big spoons, and I said, "Oh, can you bring 2 teaspoons, please?" And the guy I was with said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Just follow me. Just eat with a teaspoon." And afterwards, he said, "Wow," he said, "that was such a different experience, having breakfast, the acai bowl, with a teaspoon rather than a big spoon." So just little habits can change how we eat.
Absolutely. And you want to, prep comes into it as well. Well, actually, just finishing on what you said, a blender is really good for people like me because of my smaller digestive system to pre-chew the food before you start chewing it, or even smoothies. Drinking it, fantastic, right?
That's my breakfast, smoothie every morning.
Right, there we go. Right. That's another way. And also your prep. Well, that's part of prep. Having things that are stewed and really worked over and really softened up. Once again, for my type, my smaller digestive system, there's a ecto and meso. We'll talk about that later on. But as a thin, sort of a lean kind of dude, we tend to have smaller digestive systems. So one other thing is combinations. So in the morning, like glucose spikes, you want to reduce the number of those that we are faced with potentially every day. And so with sugar, that kicks off a bunch of insulin, which is what tends to do a lot of the damage as well. You want to have a breakfast if it makes sense to have a breakfast, and we have the tools that identify this for people as well, right? In what we do. So if everybody's wondering, fine, Tommy, like, how do I find out? Well, we've got the tools for that stuff. In fact, we've got it in our programs as well. But eating, the general rule is to perhaps not have a glucosey type meal in the morning. Go savory. And then here's another general rule with how you're eating is get your fiber in and get it in first. Because what that does is create this filter sieve so that anything that's sweet at the end is why somehow they got it right with dessert being at the end, as long as you've had enough of your veggies, right? Who remembers our mothers hammering us with that beforehand? which is full of not only great minerals and it's low calorie, but it's full of fiber, which creates that nice bed. It's like if you have a sink and you put a whole lot of fibrous material on top, it's slower going down to the sinkhole, right? It's almost like a block. You want to have that so your body isn't creating these sugar spikes, releasing a stack of insulin that's causing, in fact, most of the chronic disease problems that we have today. At least the top three it's connected to. One we know of called diabetes, but that's also connected to cardiovascular disease and stuff to do with cancer, right? As well. So there's another one. That's probably it on the how.
Yeah. So just something to add to that, to me, in terms of how to eat one food. One thing I really want to emphasize here, for those that are not already doing it, wherever possible, start to seek organic, clean food. Because,
ideally, yes.
Yeah, ideally, yes, because the cleaner the food goes in the body, yeah, the less the body has to work as hard to clean up all the poisons and toxins we're putting in the body, because it works overtime, continually, constantly cleaning up the mess, like little vacuum cleaners going around continually. And a lot of people who have body stress, or if they're exhausted, a lot of exhaustion is just simply the body continually trying to clean up the mess that we keep putting in there. So if we can help that along by putting in cleaner food, better water, better liquids, it's like putting good fuel in a car. You know, if you put good fuel in a car, the motor keeps running. If you put, sugar in the water tank, in the fuel tank, you're gonna have problems. No different than the human body. No different.
Absolutely, you are. Yeah, I mean, toxic load is a real big problem today. All right, in other areas, EMF as well. But when we're talking food, all the chemicals that are on the food, glyphosate's a big one. It destroys your microbiome. Then you start to have big problems because you have what they call endotoxins seeping into your blood system, because the connections between all the biome and sort of very thin cellophane thin mucus layer around your stomach starts to permeate through that, and that is not cool. Over years, chronic disease issues, immune issues as well, right? So you don't want to go down that track. Absolutely.
So one thing, if you're not buying organic and you're buying veggies that potentially do have the pesticides and herbicides on them, just a very, very mild clean soap, in warm water, and just soak them in there for 20 minutes. Give them a bit of a scrub, and a lot of those toxins will actually get washed off with a nice, clean organic sort of washer. Give them a wash before you put them in your body. That's another how.
Right, and you would know this from your biodynamic agricultural days, no doubt, right? And
absolutely,
even better than organic. That's even better than organic.
Absolutely, because the big part of any decent food is, it's not the shape, it's not so much the color, it's the nutrition in the food. And if you're eating sort of unhealthy veggies and fruits that are not nutritious, you may as well eat sort of the packet they come in rather than the fruit or the veggies. So a good, clean, biodynamic, or organic fruit, veggie, so much better for you from a nutritional perspective as well. Lots of research has been done around this over the last 40 years, organic versus non-organic, nutrition-wise, taking samples of the different products and seeing actually what's in there. So every time, where possible, clean, organic, or biodynamic if possible. And we'll speak more about the different types of foods like biodynamics in later lectures, webinars. So Tommy, let's one final one,
Adrian.
One is why.
Right. Well, before we go there, just finishing off the how.
Yeah.
When you get to 80% full, I mean, most people know this, but it's a great one. It works. 80%, just stop. Just give yourself a break. Have some water. Just hang there for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes if you can. Then you'll find, oh my God, I'm feeling full. Awesome, right? The Japanese invented that one, and it's pretty smart. So because the rest of your body and hormones are catching up to send the signals, and this can vary genetically for people, like it does for me. It takes a while for me for that to kick in. I can overrun that runway a lot. So I've got to be careful.
Guilty,
Right?
guilty of that one.
All
Just
right.
one more
Sorry.
slice, one more pie, have three
Right.
pies instead of two, when two probably would suffice.
Yeah. Okay. All right, mate.
Yeah.
And why? So, yeah, your question around why?
Yeah.
Okay. So, why is it all about the eating? And I guess the why really here is to do with one size doesn't fit all when you're eating. And so, because, as I said before, we are, fancy words, biochemically individual, we're different. That means that, and you mentioned the words racing fuel, right? It's different. If you want to be there for the long term and having I'm not talking about length of life, although that will certainly increase as well, but having a bigger health span within that, right? Then it's really important to get these things right. So, yep, veggies generally, all of us pretty well can be eating more. Ideally organic, even better if you can go biodynamic and really want to step up your game. But what we have as far as veg and the macros, right? You got the carbs, you got the proteins, you got the fats. That's going to vary for each individual. And we've got the tools that look at you from an epigenetic point of view. In other words, that's a fancy word for, I was talking about DNA and 33,000 genes, right? In your software library to choose from, switching on the ones that are going to best serve you. You don't want the ones that are switching on all the time, that are trying to kind of keep you alive, but are actually not that good for you. You want to get in harmony with your body, right? And that's probably a good segue into nourishment, because when nourishment of the soul, as we sort of transmute, if that's the right word, I don't know, transition into that you got to get this physical entity, this 3D thing, because you're going to take us into more 4 and 5th D. You can explain that one. I'll leave that one for you. In great shape, so that you can have that symbiotic relationship between, let's say, your soul and your spirit and your vessel that the spiritual entity is antennaing through. Let's make it a good experience, right? We all want to be satisfied in life, and we want to have nourished bodies so that we can have also, nourished souls. So where do we go with this? Nourished souls, which one first, the nourished soul or the nourished body, or how does it play out? Adrian, over to you, mate.
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I think as we go through the rest of the webinar tonight, you're going to tell your story a little bit, Tommy. I'm going to tell mine, and into our own eating stories, and hopefully that'll give people a bit of guidance and inspiration on what they can do with their own. So just a little reminder for people, we've been on half an hour now. People are still with us. And what I'd just like to reiterate here, Tommy, is, if people stay to the end with us, we actually do have a special gift for those right at the end of, another half an hour to go. So bear with us with this. Stay with us, and we have something special at the end. So, Tommy, your story.
My story.
Just a little bit of a touch base, bit of guidance, bit of inspiration for people, because there's some fellow on the left-hand side of my screen here that I'm looking at with a white shirt on. Just tell me about him and tell me the story of what's going on here.
Okay. Well, it looks like someone's doctored these photos a little bit to show the extreme, but I think anybody can work it out. Like that guy on the left, actually, he's actually my brother. You can see me there in the middle. Well, I mean, epigenetically or genetically, let's say, we're kind of very similar, but one of them's really fat, one of them's really skinny. And then you got this sort of like triathlete dude in the gym there on the right that's showing off. Well, actually, I got to tell you, the guy on the far left was me when I was 40. When I was 40 exactly, was at the birth of my son, Aki, and I was 20 kilos heavier than the guy in the middle, and it's probably about 22 or so than the guy that's obviously in training for a triathlon. Well, not so obvious, but he was on the far right. That was an interesting journey. I was 40 years of age. What used to work for me in losing weight wasn't working anymore. I went to the Singapore Sports Medical Center to learn about, well, I had to go on a course to actually learn. I educated myself on why is it I can't lose weight? Why can't I just run a couple of times a week like I used to? Well, things were hormonally starting to change in me, right? It wasn't disappearing anymore, along with all the stress that I was having. So I was, eating a fair bit of stress. And that also added to it. And that not knowing what I was eating, when I was eating, how much I should be eating, I was just carte blanche. I was just like, I loved pizzas. I still do love them. And so I had to learn a lot of things, and then I had to apply them. So over a 12-week period, I did this thing at the Singapore Sports Medical Center, checked in. I had a dietitian. I had a doctor that would check on me each of the 3 months, and I had a personal trainer. I've got to tell you, the part that had the most positive effect was actually the training. So I physically trained. I lost about 11 or 12 kilos. My trainer at the end, I said, how do I keep this weight off? I burnt all this stuff off. Dietitian actually was useless. Taught me hardly anything about what I should be eating and when and how much and whatever. And I lost 11. She said to me, actually, to keep it off, let's put you in. How about we go for the Stand Chart half marathon in 6 months' time? I said, are you out of your freaking mind? Like, I hate running. Doing the 4Ks here in the gym, I loathe it. She said, think about it for a week. We'll put you on a training program, do it gradually. This is where I started learning also about habits. So I came back a week later and I said, yes, okay, I'm in. I'm going to give this a crack. Let's compress and go straight to the end. I kept the weight off. I trained for 6 months. On the 2 weeks beforehand, when you're doing the training for like a half marathon or endurance run, you actually run 23 Ks or thereabouts. You actually run more, but not on like timing and going for your best time. And I sat down on the park bench. I thought, change of belief was right there. I thought, oh my God, I just ran a half marathon. The other 8 or 9 kilos came from learning about what sort of foods. So we start to combine eating and exercise there. But and then I became a triathlete accidentally. I didn't plan to become a triathlete. I looked at those guys watching the Olympics as a kid and thinking, why in the hell would you inflict that much pain on your body? Well, that's another story for another day. But I ended up, learning to swim. I hated swimming. I couldn't swim 50 meters. And I learned to ride a bike better than the average Joe Blow. And had a bit of a gift in being able to do that at good speed. So,
and as we say, Tommy, pictures tell 1,000 words, and if you look at the pictures on the screen, what a great story for that. I say to people, it's not a weight loss; it's a lifestyle change.
It's a lifestyle change. It totally is. Right, eating's a big part of it. The 3 legs on the stool. We're not going to go into them today, all of them. Eating's a big one.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm going to flick over here and just briefly share my story too. Here, got a few little slides. So the one on the left with the under my arms there with a beautiful gold medal around my neck is actually 16 1-liter containers of almond milk, because over a 4-month period with the trainer I was working with, I lost 16 kilos of body fat in 3 months. And what he did to celebrate it, he actually went out and bought 16 cartons of almond milk, put them under my arms and made me run around the block with 16 kilos of almond milk, so that I could really consciously understand the amount of weight I'd lost, because it was just a concept in my head. But I tell you, running with that under my arms, I really got a sense of, wow, that was an incredible journey. What it did for me, it freed up my body to be able to move better. There's a photograph of me in Goa, actually in India, at a yoga retreat there. And the subtleness of my body and being able to move my body in such an easier way without that 16 kilos was an incredible experience. And here I am, just to remind ourselves that sometimes in life, you've also still got to enjoy what goes in. I go to a cafe here on the Gold Coast and I order my bowl of coffee. So I actually can just see the lip of it in the picture there. And I sit back and I enjoy occasionally a huge, big coffee, because enjoying food is probably one of the most important. So when we come to how we have our food, with enjoyment. So I'm going to end my little story with that little message. we still have to enjoy food, and sometimes it's okay to be a little bit naughty.
Look, I'm up for cheat day.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let's not go crazy on this stuff and
Yeah.
become what they call orthorexic. So yeah.
So Tommy, we've told a bit of a story. So just briefly, and we'll keep this pretty brief. I just want, just for a bit of clarity for people on you and I and the Corporate Alchemist project. We formed this business together. We've got programs we formed together. So just for some qualifying of what you and I hold behind us, of how we come to this place. So just going to share a little bit of a story about myself first. So first and foremost, for the last 20 years, I've been working as a holistic coach, counselor, and psychotherapist. Love working with people. I'm a published author as well, having published several books. I love presenting, emceeing, and love my professional speaking, and also teaching people. I was working with 2 clients today, doing some public speaking work. I'm a father of 6 adult children and a grandfather of 4 granddaughters, and my first grandson's just arrived, so just a few weeks ago. And also, one of my passions, love playing the didgeridoo. So there's a little bit of insight into the life of Adrian. And then just quickly, we're going to jump over a little bit of an insight into meeting my biz partner, Tommy. So Tommy.
Yes, business partner and brother. So yeah, 28 years in the corporate IT world, 14 in Australia, 14 based out of Singapore. And it was exciting. I was getting physically, I was stimulated. I was on adrenaline, dopamine, all those sorts of neurochemicals that fire you up, that I thought was happiness. I thought, whoa, let's just keep that going, to learn later. And drinking lots of alcohol, lots of late nights, lots of flights. And as you could see, when I was turned 40, thought, well, we got to change that stuff. And so, I became an executive coach actually earlier, while I was still in Australia, before I left. And that was because I really was motivated by helping people and helping people actually learn about who they are and kind of why they're here. And interestingly, when I was after the .com era, where I was feeling pretty burnt out and there was a lot of great stuff happening there, I then decided that, well, actually a job opportunity came along to test me. I fell back into the system, and that's then when I moved to Singapore and got distracted by all these great things. Became a certified executive coach then, Gallup Strengths as well, just before leaving my career 5 years ago, so that I could also be able to analyze support executives in a more credible way with a tool that was well known across the corporate circles. And so I got myself qualified in that. And health tech entrepreneur, dealing in bits of health tech. So sorry, dragged that out for way too long, but that's what I did.
That's what I love about you. You're gorgeous, mate. I love it. Yeah. So just quickly, we're talking about eating today specifically. So just touching on the 3 pillars of quantum performance, just to put it all into context for people, so that it's not just sitting alone. So you can see in the physiological, we've got the eating, the moving, the sleeping. In the physiological, we've got the brain, the mind, and the soul, emotions. And then we've coined something specific called the spiritualogical, which is all about the meditation, the higher self, and the purpose. And as we come to you every Tuesday with these live webinars, we'll be moving through the scale of these 3 pillars, week by week, month by month, to bring you all of this content over the next few weeks and months. I'm really looking forward to that journey, Tommy. So just turning back to, we said to people, if you're with us towards the end, you're going to get a special gift. Last year, Tommy and I ran an event called Transform here on the Gold Coast. That was videoed, lots of content. There was 6 hours of footage. We've now taken that into some training program and some edutainment, as we called it. So you can see here, there's 4 videos here: the intro, the journey, the corporate alchemist, and the optimized soul performance. So if you go into the comments, either in Facebook, or in LinkedIn, and you put the word transform there in the chat, we will go and seek through that after this webinar. We'll find you, and we will send you a link to get access to those videos. And as a bonus, for those that have jumped on for our very first webinar tonight with Tommy and I, as a very special thank you for trusting us and being here with us tonight, Tommy and I have got something we spoke about just before coming on that we're going to offer to those that are here live. And that is a 30-minute private one-on-one session with either Tommy or myself. So if you've put transform in the link, we'll contact you, but we'll book you in for a 30-minute one-on-one with Tommy or myself as a very special thank you for being here. Okay, so Tommy, do you want to finish on and comment on this slide before we have a Q&A?
Absolutely. So we have communities in LinkedIn where we have the Corporate Alchemist page. So if you search in LinkedIn for Corporate Alchemist Project, and same with Facebook, Corporate Alchemist Project, same with YouTube. So search on the same string of characters, Corporate Alchemist Project, as it says there, and you'll find us. Subscribe, share, and pay it forward for those you think may benefit from content that we're putting out there, and or whatever. All that feedback helps, and engage, and we're happy to sort of respond on those different pages as well as through DMs.
Absolutely. And just before we jump out, and of course, there is the website, corporatealchemistproject.com website.
Oh yeah, of course.
Where there's lots and lots of information, downloads, etc., on there. So I'm just going to jump here just before we jump into the Q&A, Tommy, just to let people know about something really special we've got happening that starts on the 25th of September. We've got our Quantum Performance Group Masterclass that is a online 12-week program that people can come on board to take you through that journey with the 12 video series we have, where you'll get Tommy and I for 90 minutes a week, every week for 12 weeks, online for this absolute masterclass. You can find that on the website, corporatealchemist.com. Please jump on, have a look, and go on the wait list, and we will contact you and talk to you about the early bird pricing and bonuses you'll get if you jump on board there. Tommy, anything quickly you want to say about that?
They may also, just so they don't know Scott, but Scott is probably the one that's going to be doing a lot of the reaching out there and connecting to facilitate you getting the benefit of being an early bird, etc. So Scott's he basically leads our sales and marketing, and so Scott's the new member of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and welcome to Scott as well, and people will get to know Scott as we go through the journey. So ask us anything. So if you have a question, please type your questions into the chat box. That'll be either on LinkedIn or on Facebook. So we can jump on and check those on our other mobile devices and have a look to see if anybody's having a bit of a chat. We've also got a couple of questions that came in earlier that we can jump on today as well. So I'll jump on LinkedIn and have a look. Tommy, if you want to jump on the Facebook.
Yeah, and I've got stuff on the side here. Where do I learn more? Well, we just answered that one. Okay, how do I find out about what I should be eating? Right, okay. So as we said, I mean, we have a number of tools that analyze you through the science of, once again, epigenetics, and actually one part that will help you identify your epigenetically defined, optimized diet. So, one of the apps and one of the companies we work with enables us to be able to give you that information. There's a whole lot of, being a health tech entrepreneur as well, there's I don't know, we counted up to 14 or 15, I think, the other day, Adrian, when I started actually reeling them off into our enablement sort of spreadsheet. But this is one that's really important because it does a number of things. One is saying, okay, here is what this person should be eating This is when they should be doing it. This is how they should do their food prep. This is the not one size fits all approach that is specific to you and what it is that you require, right, to have this vessel at its optimized best.
Yeah, and I think that's really exciting, Tommy, that when people get to understand that individualism around eating, and then one can take oneself on a really special, I'm not going to call it a diet, a very special eating plan. It actually is very exciting.
It's a really important part of the journey.
Yeah, because when you get excited about food, when you go, I'm going to go and eat this particular food because I know it's the best thing for me in this moment, and I'm going to get the best benefit from this thing in this moment, that can only be a good thing.
It is, and you're nourishing your body so that it also, you just notice like your energy levels significantly increase. The clarity of thinking is one of the big things I also discovered. And then that starts affecting relationships, and like we said, I mean, you're also nourishing your soul at the same time, because emotions come from the limbic part of the brain, and that's going to start to change as you biochemically change things. Emotions are going to start changing. Soul is then, and spiritually, it's an exercise to start to learn the new habits and become consciously aware, as you would very well know, in making the right decisions. But they start to become automatic because you start seeing the benefits. But using the right sort of information and applying it, and having someone to support you through making those 1% changes starts to compound, becomes a very exciting journey, like you said.
Yeah. So, Tommy, a question for you here is, where is the best place to start on this journey? That's the question just come through. It's like,
right,
where, if you had somebody right now who's doing the ordinary diet, maybe carrying a little bit of excess weight, probably maybe a couple of bad habits, where's the one starting place to really get going? Just to give some people some
okay, some freebies. I usually, when I'm coaching, the first really simple thing is get rid of the white carbs. White colored carbs, right? That's the refined processed crap. Just get rid of those to start off with. Okay, rather than getting too science detailed and complex. I mean, we've got all that stuff, but that's the first big one. And replace that with drinking more water, so you feel more full, and other things that aren't white, right? So, including probably milk, unless you are 70% of the world is lactose intolerant. Just saying, right? So another industry that's done really well. But that would be the first step. Second would be reach out to me, or Adrian or Scott, and we would be able to help you from there on.
But just that basic processed white carb food, take it out of the diet. Like get rid of it.
Take it out of the diet.
Throw it in the bin.
That's the first little step, the first little 1%er.
Thanks, Tommy. Because often people get stuck on where to begin, like in anything, whether that's eating, moving, exercise, going to the gym. But when people have that first initial inertia movement, then people can continue from that. So thanks for sharing that. First thing to do tip, because I think that's probably one of the most important things we share tonight is how to get going, how to get started. So so thanks.
That's where I go.
Yeah. So Tommy, any other questions in there, or any other questions you have that are a bit more generic that you'd like to answer?
Okay. One on exercise, not about eating, but how do I know what I should be doing with exercise? It's because I mentioned at the beginning, sort of doing HIIT and so on. Not that this webinar was about that. We also do that as well. In fact, the eating, the moving, and the sleeping piece, we do go into. And then when I start talking about the three-legged stool, and then there's the mind, right? And so those three things with the fourth thing, which is the brain, all working symbiotically together. Yes, there are things you can do with each of those legs and the brain to optimize, and then even going beyond that, which is when we start going into the spiritual logical, where you've got a whole lot of great stuff, Adrian.
Yeah.
So
so that exercise question is, probably in relation to eating. If you say you're going to have a meal at lunchtime, when's a good time to exercise after each meal?
Okay. So look, it's once again, this helps the glucose spikes sort of flattening out into rolling hills more so as well. As soon as you've had something to eat, go and do the walk. If you're doing 5 times 30 minutes a week, the recent book by Dr. Peter Attia, an ex-cancer surgeon.
Tommy, just on that, do you want to swish so we can see our beautiful faces? Do you want to swish?
Oh, just we don't need the deck anymore, do we? Let's do that. There we go. Bang. Thanks, mate. So he said 5 times 30 minutes a week, and there's a clinical study that was done on this, reduced all-cause mortality, in other words, all things you can die of, apart from maybe car crashes, by around about a third. I mean, wow. Do you know a pill that can do that? Even ridiculous. And this isn't exactly an eating one. This is to do with reducing the toxic load, the other side of the picture. So not only getting the right vitamins in at the right time, right amount, etc., circadian rhythm, but sauna is also another one, which the results are ridiculous. We're going off topic, but that's another one.
We'll hold that topic for the next webinar, because we'll be looking at exercise and movement in the next video, in the next webinar. So we'll be doing that. So look, Tommy, to the top of the hour here. Firstly, I want to thank everybody for jumping on and being with us in this first webinar of our many of a series that we're going to be running through over the next few months, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm looking forward to all that we can bring. Just a reminder to people, please put in the word transform into the chat so we can send you those gifts and get you locked up. And then also, please, check us out on social media, go to the website, check us out, put your name details in. Scott will probably reach out and have a conversation with you if you want to do that. And we will be seeing you again next week, live, Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, that's it. All right. Okay, and as we go out, we'll play the trailer to our quantum performance program. So I'm going to put that on, Adrian. Here we go. Fantastic. Bye, guys. We'll see you next week.
See you next week. When we go into the quantum field, it is the new paradigm.
It is.
And by not going there, by not going that quantum space, what's going to happen? From the physiological, the psychological, the spiritualogical, as we've coined, those 3 aspects of life.
I think they're going to stay in pain in a relative sense. Look, we grow up, go through the education system, then into the business system, and we get programmed and conditioned, and we have been in what's now become an old paradigm. Because I think people are waking up across the world. But I think there's a marvelous opportunity for corporations to take that leadership position, stepping it up, pushing the envelope into how do we expand ourselves beyond just being that objective, data-driven only, left brain kind of thinking. It's so limiting.
When we connect into that energy force, things move, things happen. We're script writing a new life. Right. We're script writing a new lifestyle. The subconscious mind does not know the difference between fiction and reality. So if we put that imagination into the mind and start to imagine that we're living in a certain way, and we start to develop that and actually bring it into fruition, into practice, after a while it becomes our new paradigm.
Just because you can't put it in a spreadsheet yet doesn't mean it's not happening.
Let's create this vision of what I call the future potential self. Who do I want to become?